I have no idea for the bump.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah, we straight chillin', serial killing, pre-core villains on the mic, got you reeling. 5-star rated from the floor to the ceiling. If you catch a 1-star, no time for feelings. Got a demon DJ on the ones and twos, by the name Beelzebub, so don't get confused. So grab a seat by the fire, roast them all over two, and prepare to hear the legend of the straight chillin' crew.
What up, nerds, and welcome to another hammered episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name is Bob. I'll be your host for the evening. This is episode number 367, recorded Sunday, April 17th, 2022. Tonight, we're talking about another Patreon pick. This was chosen by Miles B. The movie is The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randu. How do?
How's it going, buddy?
Was that a pooping noise? Is that what that?
Bro, I just hatched and pooped at the same time.
Oh, okay. That's a strange bump that I'm not a fan of. I don't like it.
I am risen, you know? What can I say?
I understand the bump better now. Thank you for adding some context.
Yeah, that was an impromptu decision, so.
Yeah, we are recording on the holiest of holies, Easter Sunday. Well, one of the holiest of holies, anyway. Maybe not the holiest. I don't know how to rank these.
Pop, rank the holiness of days for us, please. Come on, top 10 holiest days. Bye, Bob.
Shit.
Here we
go. Really
Start.
put me on the spot. Halloween number 1 for sure. The rest of them, I don't know. Don't really matter. Last but not least, calling in from South Korea, we got our boy Soju. What's up, man?
What up? It's your boy Resurrection Stains. You think they're gone? They just keep coming back.
You can never really clean those drawers. You can't.
They just keep rising up from the ashes.
The grave.
The cream rises, you know?
Yeah.
The cream. It is, talking about a Frankenstein movie on Easter is like, I don't know. It makes some sense. I guess.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that when I watched it, but it totally fits in a weird way.
Yeah, in a strange and very accidental way, because Miles had no idea we were talking about his show on Easter, and here we are doing it.
Yeah.
Big thanks to Miles for picking a flick for us to review. This was actually last time he got one of the U picks. This was his original choice, and then he changed it to Gamera, and we talked about that.
Oh, I thought he changed it to the Howling Deuce. Okay.
And he got another one and was like, you know what, I'll go ahead and validate that Blu-ray purchase because I already purchased the movie. So we get to talk about it today. So thanks, Miles. Before we get into the review, let's tackle some housekeeping real quick. Here's another reminder. We do have our May poll pick currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this May. The theme for May is Friday the 13th, and the 3 movies to vote between are Friday the 13th Part 2, Jason X, and Freddy vs. Jason.
Whoa, Bob.
Good camp blood, ain't ya?
What an amazing lineup. Tell me about those numbers.
It's amazing. Jason X is in first place by a single vote. Freddy vs. Jason is just behind it. Jason Sex. Jason Triple Sex. And nobody wants us to talk about Part 2, so that's not going to win. That's not going to win.
Nay, nobody. There's so many to choose from, and just a note, it's crazy that this is the only Friday the 13th, and it's happening as summer kicks off for the year.
Yeah,
only Friday the 13th for the year, so that's nice. That's appropriate.
Perfect.
Nothing more appropriate for a summer themed show than something set in outer space.
Right.
Hey, you know what? If you're gonna do space horror, you might as well do it in summer, because once spooky season comes around, I don't want that shit in my viewing radius.
In my viewing radius. Wow.
All right.
Fucking ejected. July 5th.
Yeah,
Summer's
July
fucking over.
5th. Yep. Space. Nope. I don't want anything to do with it.
Pumpkin season. Get your votes in before the end of April. We'll see what we're talking about this May. In other Patreon news, we did drop a brand new mini cast this past Friday. If you support us at the $10 level or above, you get access to a whole backlog of Patreon exclusive episodes. Last Friday, I dropped one where I review Dexter New Blood, which is like season 9 of Dexter. They did sort of like a Control-Alt-Delete and like tried to correct the ending of season 8.
They resurrected it.
They intentionally ruined the last season and then decided just so they could later resurrect.
There you go.
My fan theory.
They found some more money somewhere.
Let's just tank this shit and then leave the thread open for later. We can't figure this out right now.
But yeah, if you want to hear my thoughts on Dexter New Blood, you can find that over on our Patreon website. In other Patreon news, we have not one, but 2 brand new Patreon supporters.
Oh, shit.
I know. We got to give mad shouts outs to Alistair R. and Reese D. Big thanks for signing up on Patreon and showing us some love. Every dollar you guys contribute goes right back into the show. It really means a lot to us. And as is tradition around these here parts, we owe Alistair and Reese the straight chilling salute. These go out to you.
Slap me in the ass.
And one
One
more.
more time.
Oh, God. Slap me in the ass.
Oh, God. Oh, God. Slap me in the ass.
Slap me
Keeping us pert and red. God
Thank
bless
you. Thank you for the support. International squad showing up. Whoa.
Yeah,
for real.
Yeah. What else do we have going on here? That's all we got for Patreon. Here's your final reminder. We're doing a Straight Chilling meetup in Jacksonville, Florida, Friday, April 22nd. That's this Friday coming up. It's happening at Rain Dogs, which is a bar in town. Kicking it off at 7 p.m. It's just going to be kind of a general meet and greet. But it's also going to be a swap meet. So if you want to bring any horror merch to trade, whether it be, action figures, movies, comic books, signatures, whatever, bring it. And maybe you can trade with some folks.
A little mingler. We'll do a little speed dating. Right. Bob's got some wet Sammies.
Wet
speed dating. But Bob is the only other contestant you can match with.
It's really just an auction for Bob's.
Why are the sandwiches
You have to meet
wet?
in his van.
They have extra toppings. Just means they're good.
Extra toppings. Mystery toppings.
I guess. It just makes me think of that vacation movie where the dog pees on their picnic basket and all their sandwiches are soaked with dog urine and they eat them and don't know. There you go. None of that's going to happen at that meetup, though. Just to be very clear, it'll be fun. Friday, April 22nd. Mark your calendars. Last thing I have is we're doing another raffle. All you have to do to enter the raffle is leave us a 5-star rating and a nice little review on iTunes. You'll be entered into the raffle. We're going to be giving away just a straight chilling care package with some of our merchandise and also like general, like interesting, hopefully horror related stuff. So get that in before the end of the month, and then we'll go ahead and do our raffle first week of May.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
That's all I got. Do you guys have anything?
Do we ever?
Clean.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do.
Do we?
This house is clean.
All right, let's jump into the main event. We're talking about the Curse of Frankenstein, and we're kicking it off in the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
All right.
I know you got that box because you ordered it a year ago.
Give me that box, Bob.
I got it. I got it right here.
I was in town when you bought that.
You saw the mistakes live.
I saw many mistakes in my time.
Damn you! We're talking the Curse of Frankenstein. It does indeed have a death curse. It is from 1957. This is a Hammer horror film directed by Terrence Fisher. It was written by Jimmy Sangster and, of course, based on characters from Mary Shelley. Stars Peter Cushing, Hazel Court, Robert Urquhart, some other folks. Before we get down to it, I got a little synopsis that's on IMDb. The back of the box actually does not synopsize anything. It just kind of claims that this movie kicks a lot of ass. So I'm just gonna read this shit off IMDb real quick.
I mean, that's not too far off from general back of the box.
A lot, yeah.
All right.
Box quotes. IMDb says, while awaiting execution for murder, Baron Victor Frankenstein tells the story of a creature he built and brought to life, only for it to behave not as he intended. Gentlemen, had you seen this movie before? Would you recommend people check it out? Randy, kick us off.
No, I had not seen this film before. And in fact, I had mentioned this on the Slack, outside of more recent Hammer revival productions, this is the first Hammer in its heyday film that I have seen, at least that I'm aware of. I would generally recommend, if you kind of know what you're in for with that. I think that this is kind of a pretty solid, 50s era gothic horror. So if that sounds like it's up your alley, then you're probably in good hands here. I'm not sure how to elaborate on that exactly, so I'm just going to leave it as is.
All right, Juice, what about you?
I had also never seen this before. I would give a loose recommend, I guess. Just for the 50s era, it's a decent entry into what I've seen from the 50s, which I generally kind of dig on. I'm coming to find out. I kind of like that time period of horror, and this is solid. It's not the Frankenstein story, in my opinion, and it's not going to be one of the top Frankenstein films that I've seen. But, well, I mean, I don't know, but it's decent enough for the 50s, I think. So, yeah,
right on.
Generally,
wow.
Yeah, Bob, you watched this last year, right?
Yeah, this was the second time I watched it. And yeah, kind of like you guys, I do recommend this movie, but I think a lot of people do struggle with older horror, and this does have that sort of 50s vibe going on, for better or worse, and we'll get into it. But I think if you hold this up to modern standards, it moves a little slow, but at the same time, I think when the action does kick off, it's interesting and brutal enough. So go into it expecting a movie from the 50s that's probably going to move a little slower than you want it to, and I think you'll enjoy it for what it is, or at least I did. So yeah, a very qualified recommendation from the three of us.
So plump, so right.
So plump. That Frankenstein is so plump.
That's a plump Frank.
Let's go and drop that spoiler warning and get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
All right, boys, we're doing it.
You got that plot synopsis?
I got the plot synopsis. Here we go. In 19th century Switzerland, Baron Victor Frankenstein is awaiting execution for the murder of his maid, Justine. He tells the story of his life to a visiting priest. At age 15, the death of Victor's mother leaves him in control of her estate. He pays a small allowance to his aunt and cousin Elizabeth and engages scientist Paul Krimp to tutor him. After a couple years of study, the two reanimate a dead dog, and Victor wants to create the perfect human life from body parts. Paul eventually quits when Victor's fiancée, also his cousin Elizabeth, comes to live with him. Victor builds his creation and completes it with the brain of a distinct scientist he murdered by pushing over a banister. Paul tries to stop him from removing the scientist's brain, causing damage to it. Victor brings the creature to life, but the damaged brain causes it to be violent and psychotic. The creature kills an old blind man in the woods before Paul shoots it in the eye, and Victor and Paul bury it. Paul leaves town, and Victor digs the creature up and brings it back to life yet again. Victor's mistress, Justine, claims she is pregnant by him and threatens to tell the authorities about his experiments if he doesn't marry her. Victor then allows the creature to kill her. Paul visits the house the evening before Victor and Elizabeth are to be married, and Victor shows him the reanimated creature yet again. The creature escapes and threatens Elizabeth's life on the roof. Victor accidentally shoots Elizabeth and throws an oil lamp at the creature, causing it to ignite and fall through the ceiling into a vat of acid, destroying it. The priest doesn't believe Victor's story. Paul comes to visit him, and Victor begs Paul to corroborate what he's told the priest. Paul denies the entire experiment and joins Elizabeth outside the jail, telling her there's nothing more they can do for Victor. Victor is then carried off to the guillotine. Roll credits. All right, yeah, so I have like a little bit of Hammer horror history. So this is the first like Hammer proper we're going to be talking about on the show. We talked about The Lodge, which is like a modern Hammer horror release. But this is kind of like the first one that has that Hammer look. And I kind of wanted to contextualize the movie a little bit.
This is the first one?
Yeah, the first Hammer horror we're talking about.
Okay. But wait, you said that has that look. The first one that we're talking about, the first one that was made?
Both.
Okay. Clarify.
I'll get into more of that. So Hammer Horror, the company, well, it's actually just called Hammer, was founded in 1934 by a comedian named William Hines. His stage name was Will Hammer, which was, he got his name after Hammersmith, which is where he's from.
So dude, it was Hines.
What is it with comedians just like doing baller ass fucking horror shit?
Yeah.
Like that's true today.
Well, let me finish. The company was in bankrupt in 1937, so it didn't last too long. However, film productions did start back up in 1947 with the release of Death in High Heels. And then Hammer Horror, as we know it, was sort of born in 1955 with the release of a movie called The Quatermass Experiment. And that was super popular. The Curse of Frankenstein was then released in 1957. That's what we're talking about tonight. This was their 60th release out of 174 movies to date. It was the first Hammer horror to be filmed and released in color. And its worldwide success sort of like helped brand Hammer as being a very distinct type of Gothic cinema. And it was the first to have that sort of classic Hammer horror look to it.
Gotcha.
So the company of Hammer chose to submit their scripts to the British Board of Film Censors, which is basically like the British version of the MPAA. They didn't have to submit their scripts, but they did have to submit their movies to get the rating certificate. But they sent over the script for this movie, and the BBFC said this about it. We are concerned about the flavor of this script, which in its preoccupation with horror and gruesome detail goes far beyond what we are accustomed to allow, even for the X category. I'm afraid we can give no assurance that we should be able to pass a film based on the present script, and a revised script should be sent to us for our comments, in which the overall unpleasantness should be mitigated.
Who are you calling a cootie queen, you lint liquor?
Mitigate that unpleasantness.
Mitigate the unpleasantness, you bastard.
Those Brits, they sure know how to censor, don't they?
They
interesting European style.
They did not change anything and just made the movie. So it worked out, apparently.
That's how it works out.
The last little bit of information here was the company was then again dissolved in 1979 to be later resurrected once again in 2008 with the release of a movie called Beyond the Rave. And then they subsequently released Let Me In, The Woman in Black, as well as its sequel, and most recently, The Lodge.
Whoa, Bob, your favorite.
Lodge.
I love Lodge.
All right.
So yeah, a little bit of background for Hammer horror, since we've never really gotten deep on this show with it. Let's dive into this Frankenstein movie.
One revelation for me was I didn't realize that Peter Cushing was in so many horror films. You know, like I knew he had a reputation, and I'm not very, especially Hammer horror. I'm not very familiar with Hammer horror. I haven't seen a whole lot, but I was just kind of going back, and I was like, oh, what else was he in? I was like, holy shit, he was like Van Helsing,
Everything,
yeah, just
and
everything.
Christopher Lee as well. They were like sort of I think the two of them together were in like 50 movies or something like that. And a lot of them were like Hammer horror movies where they would sort of like trade playing like the lead in the monsters. Like Christopher Lee in this movie is Frankenstein's monster, but he would then go on to play Dracula several times. He played the Mummy. He was in a ton of these movies. They were in a ton of them together, so they're sort of like a 1-2 hitter.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this:
Hammer horror. Yeah.
So like, I mean, I know that like those two actors in particular are heavily associated with Hammer, but in terms of like visual style, like is it just about like the gothic sets and the color pop that gives like the Hammer horror its sort of like aesthetic that people associate with it?
Yeah, I think that's largely it. Not all the movies they made were really like that. They made a lot of like science fiction stuff as well. But like the classic like Frankenstein and Dracula type movies do have that sort of slow moving gothic feel that was obviously inspired by the Universal movies. And then that like really deep saturated color palette. Yeah, that's kind of like the Hammer vibe.
It's their hallmark, the Hammer hallmark.
Yeah, and they also like would linger on the gore in a way that I don't think was done much before, especially not in those like Universal movies. So you're seeing these characters that you're sort of familiar with, but with like vibrant red like blood, and it's just a little more like modern for the time anyway. It's a little more gore heavy.
You know what's interesting? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I kind of want to talk about the gore, but finish up with the idea of the Hammer horror.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is kind of an offshoot too, but like kind of in that vein. Is it like this movie? Like I hadn't seen it. Like personally, I hadn't seen any Hammer horror that was from this era, from like whatever the second wave. But I was kind of vaguely aware of it. I knew about Peter Cushing and
Christopher Lee.
Blanking Christopher Lee. Thank you. I know they're in their involvement, but watching it and I was looking specifically to like define for myself what the aesthetic was, like you just did. And it honestly, it shares a lot of DNA with what I think we see with like Giallo, like in terms of like color palette, lighting, maybe like it's got, I mean, at least this movie anyway has, I would say, significantly better sets than a lot of those movies. And, the story is a completely different animal, but I don't know. I thought that it was interesting that they shared a lot. And what's extra interesting to me as somebody who's like on record as not having like a large affinity for that kind of film, this one hit me a lot better, and the sets and the lighting and all that stuff really hit me great in this movie. So I don't know, it's interesting. And that this is like a 57. I was looking, it reminded me specifically of Black Sabbath, the Bava picture. And I watched that a few years ago. And that was released in 64. So it's like predating these movies that I would like visually see as brethren to this style, this aesthetic, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and Bava, I think, is sort of oftentimes quoted as being the father of Giallo, and then we had Argento come along and kind of perfect it after him. But like like the early 60s were probably influenced by these movies, and these movies were probably influenced by the early Giallo pictures, kind of like full circle. Everybody's like watching everybody else's
snake eating its own tail, bro.
Yeah, brother.
It's like a full circle rainbow, bro.
So talking about the gore and kind of this launching Hammer horror and the Frankensteins and Draculas of it all, we'll say like I felt like they captured the idea of Frankenstein, the monster, better in this film, because you had the 1931 film, which still kind of cements that's an iconic Frankenstein, with the kind of bolts in the neck and the the what young Frankenstein spoofs and that kind of thing, the lab and Igor and shit like that. But this Frankenstein's monster, I feel like, is a lot closer in idea, like visual wise, to what I feel like Mary Shelley wrote. He's tall, which he is in the other one too, but like mostly he just looks like a corpse, kind of, a pieced together corpse, which is what he is, kind of. And so I was pretty impressed by the just kind of melty face looking shit going on they had, and the eyes. But it's weird though, they go completely in the opposite direction on Frankenstein himself. Like, this is absolutely nothing like the Frankenstein story, which kind of bothered me, honestly, because I feel like that story is so iconic, and I feel it's very, very well written, especially even like looking back at it today. It's like impressively written, and the themes that they play with are more interesting. And I think making Frankenstein just a straight up villain was kind of like weak for me personally. I wasn't really about that change.
See, so I'm interested in here. I'm sorry, Bob, go ahead.
I don't know if this is the exact reason why they changed sort of like the character of Frankenstein and how we're perceiving him. Because yeah, he's like pretty unredeemable. But whenever they were going to make a Frankenstein movie, like they immediately got served a lawsuit by Universal saying that if anything in their movie even slightly resembled their Frankenstein movie, that they were going to sue them. So like they had to like completely change. They were forced to change the look of Frankenstein's monster specifically, which is why, you know, they look really nothing alike. And I'm sure they were forced to change the character of Frankenstein himself as well, to some degree anyway. I don't know like if how much of that was written before or forced upon them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, in 1931 Frankenstein, I feel like it would have almost been easier for them to just kind of swing it in the other way, because or like more close, because that one's pretty far off as far as like the big lab, the things, the big metal pieces that they have in there, like this assistant, the way Frankenstein looks, that's all pretty actually off from what the book is as well. So that's interesting that they felt, I mean, maybe they were really just trying to cover their bases, because they're like, in the book there's no Paul,
right, yeah,
but there is, like, to say like, oh, we got to change Frankenstein completely. Well, I mean, in the books you have like a Justine. I don't think she's in the 1931 Frankenstein or whatever, so I don't know, maybe they had a little bit more like freedom with that. I don't know. For me, I was just kind of like, man, the story Frankenstein written by Mary Shelley is so good that I couldn't help but feel like a little cheated by just having a straight up villain Frankenstein.
See, I don't know. Like, to me, I read probably like 3/4 of Frankenstein in high school and skipped the rest. But so my memory of it is pretty spotty. But I remember like Victor being a pretty terrible person in that book.
No,
is that
not
true?
Like this. No, not at all. No, I mean, I guess I could give a quick rundown of the book, like a little spoiler, I guess. But I mean, essentially, like, Victor starts off really smart and curious, and he studies. And then as he starts to get older, his kind of mom dies. And through that grief, he just pours himself into studying and isolating himself to keep his mind busy, to keep off of that. In that, he discovers this idea of, resurrecting life. And honestly, in the book, that's kind of like one of the problems I have with this story too, is like, that's just like a minimal thing. Like, it's like, oh, it just kind of happens. He's not killing anybody to steal their brain. I think he does maybe do a little grave robbing, but
just a little bit.
But essentially, as soon as it happens, what happens as soon as it happens, he's so disgusted by it, and he has just thrown himself into kind of this fever dream of like depression and just isolation and work, that he like legit is so struck by the horror that he passes out, is found by his friend and like nursed back to health, and he's like legit, like, what happened? And in that time, the monster has escaped and goes through its own tortures out in the wilderness that develops it into the monster. Like, society hates me because I'm ugly. They'll never accept me. Like, you abandoned me. But he legit just like passes the fuck out. Like, and it was like, dude, and then the monster, as a revenge, goes and starts killing his family. Like, I'm never gonna let you rest unless you make me a companion that will accept me for who I am. And so then he's like,
doesn't he reject his monster pretty much out? I mean, I just remember having a lot of detailed discussions about is the monster like
so by time
in some way the hero versus
no, because when they come back together, so he passes out in his lab. He's like, I don't know, you know. The next time he meets the monster and they have a conversation, the monster has found its way back to his hometown and has killed his younger brother and framed their longtime butler or maid or Justine, and she's hanged. So like the monster has killed his brother and framed their longtime maid for the murder, and says, I will continue, like, I'll kill Elizabeth, I'll destroy you completely if you don't build me a companion. So that's
but my understanding is that the reason he does that is that's the first interaction they have after he's created.
Yeah, because what happens? He brings him to life, and he's like,
so he just starts killing people. And how does he know that that's in response to him?
No, so what he does is he comes to life. Yeah, he comes to life. Victor is horrified by it, and he does like reject it in a like, oh god, he runs away, but then passes out like in the street or something and is nursed back to health. The monster is just like kind of just conscious and like stumbles into the wilderness and literally has to learn to talk by living next to a blind farmer and like interacting with them or whatever until they find out like what he is, and then they flee. And he keeps having these rejections with society that turn him into a monster, and in that he seeks out his creator, and I think he finds like a journal. By that time he can speak and read because he's like taught himself, and he like finds like Frankenstein's like journal or something and his log or whatever from the thing, or maybe he like has it on when he escaped the lab, and then that's how he kind of like hunts down Frankenstein. So yeah, their like first interaction as like two independent beings is the monster has already killed his younger brother and framed his maid and just like vows vengeance on him. Yeah,
well, I guess this kind of colored my viewing of this movie then to some extent, because my like memory of talking through this book through in class, you know, talking about how like, you know, what's going on here, really, all that sort of shit, is that, you know, this is a story about like, you know, like this creature being created, rejected by its creator and everyone in society, and then not knowing like what else to do besides find somebody like him. And there's only one person that he knows that can do that. So he starts trying to make that happen. He gets rejected again, and then begins like, you know, forcing Victor's hand. So like, anyway, whether or not that's the case, that's just where my mind was when I was watching this movie. And I like, you're right. Like Peter Cushing's Victor is not the same kind of villain.
Bastard,
he is a bastard, man.
He's a big asshole, and you know, I kind of liked that, honestly. Like, he's a little bit mustache twirly, a little bit like, you know, maybe a little simplistic, like in that. But like, I was happy to kind of see like, I don't know, this guy with like the whole like central thing with the story of Frankenstein is like, how hubristic of you to try and play God. And this guy has the hubris down pat. Like, that's his whole thing. So to me, it makes a kind of sense to have him be not just hubristic in his pursuits of science, but hubristic in his dealings with all people. Like,
well, this is I think the book Frankenstein, I think that's why I'm kind of like feel a little cheated, because it is a lot more deep than that. Because I mean, he's not that. It's kind of like one of those things where we were talking about The Fly a while back, you know, the actual movie, The Fly, where it's like, it's almost kind of like dealing with this singular mistake that then haunts you for the rest of your life. It's not necessarily born out of complete hubris, but in that book, he's like super young. It's almost like out of being naive and ambitious in a way, but then that like literally haunting your entire life. Like the introduction of the book Frankenstein is him as an old man still hunting the Frankenstein monster in like Antarctica, literally. Like he's like out on a ship in ice and they pull him like seconds from death or whatever. So like, I guess it's just in this one, it's just they have to create the character of Paul in order for everyone not to just be a huge piece of shit. Because Elizabeth's just a gold digger, you know. Fucking Victor is a cheating piece of shit, murderer.
Yeah,
they're
well,
also cousin fuckers, which is
Yeah,
a weird,
that's
weird thing.
Yeah,
I guess
unfortunate, but also like of the time, like of the era this is depicting, not
the
Yeah.
50s.
the 50s.
1957. Everybody was banging cousins.
Oh
It
yeah.
is the
Big
two
time.
characters of like Paul and Victor are definitely like they could have been smashed into one more interesting, fleshed out character, like have some sort of internal like battle for like Victor Frankenstein, because he is very like one note. I think he makes like a pretty solid villain in this movie, not a great villain, but I would say a good one anyways.
Yeah.
Luckily we do have a Peter to sort of like bounce his ideas off of. And then like I really like the older scientist that Victor ends up murdering to take his brain.
Yeah.
And like we only get like one scene of dialogue with him, but he sort of says something along the lines of, to be a good scientist, you have to not only like know things and make discoveries, but you have to know how people are going to use those discoveries once you sort of release them to the public. And like,
or you have to have responsibility for it.
Yeah. And yeah, you got to know if it's worth like putting out there for the public to consume and do what they will with it, because once you let it go, there's no control.
That's the thing is like for me, like what I recognize as being the story of Frankenstein is the story of not, I guess it's not just hubristic. It's also like, I don't know, like you are so, doggedly interested in what you're doing that you don't think about the consequences. And it's really like it's really like it's sci-fi horror. Isn't the future terrifying? What if we could do this? And should we be doing this? It's Jurassic Park. It's we're wondered how much, whether I forget the line, but whether you were so concerned about whether you could, you didn't think about whether you should, something along those lines. It's the same story. And that's like, to me, like it makes sense that somebody like a character like Victor Frankenstein could, at least in this case, just be like a real bastard who only ever wanted to make a name for himself, always sneered and looked down at other people. He wants to be God. He thinks of himself as a god. And I was just really compelled by that to some degree. And I liked having Paul around because he did create a foil. And to Bob's point, they definitely could have been the same character. Those are facets of the same guy if you want to write it that way. The problem is that this movie, for all of its good qualities, is pretty blunt in terms of like laying things out there. And I guess that's more really like a de facto for the time and for the audience. They're not making people guess what's going through these characters' heads. They're telling you. Having two characters host those two different points of view allows them to volley off each other.
Yeah,
so
I get
why
that.
they did it.
Because if he was the same person, then I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Because already in
narration, they already have that too.
Yeah, a lot of the things that Randy I remember describing in The Fly, I was feeling in this movie, which is interesting because they're just a year apart. This was 1957, The Fly was 1958, but I was just like, damn, we're spending a lot of time with this process. Let me go get some eyes, let me go get some hands, like over. And it's just like, man. And then even once you get the monster, they limit it. He has an interaction with the old man and the boy in the woods, but everything then is shot off screen. So it's like there's not like a lot of action, or not even action, there's just like not a whole lot going on into this movie for me, honestly. I was just kind of
so
like
interesting,
bored.
We have flip-flopped positions. Because The Fly, to me, like I was thinking about The Fly while watching this as well. The Fly definitely, like, first of all, it neglects its best actor, which is like kind of the real rub for me, is that like, yeah, they have similar like beats, similar, pacing if you like look at it in isolation. But because Peter Cushing is so fun to watch, because the guy playing Paul was doing a great job, in my opinion, like, and because you've got Christopher Lee, even in the minimal amount of time he has on screen, even like, I think they do a lot with the conversations that they have that The Fly only really had in the writing at best, and the acting did not portray it the way that Peter Cushing did, so that's to me like made the quiet moments, or the volleying back and forth, the struggle between these two ideas. And also it was a conflicted struggle, as opposed to The Fly, where it's like husband and wife, it's like,
see, I didn't think it was a conflicted struggle. And that, I think that's the problem that I have with this movie, and at least with The Fly, like to compare since they're so close, is there's a contrast. You have this very pleasant time where everything's great, you know, and you have a loving husband with a loving wife with a loving child, which then reflects the horrors of what happens, you know, living with that mistake. In this one, I just feel like I'm swimming in lukewarm water where the temperature never changes. Frankenstein's always a bastard man, and he's always doing shitty things. And when the monster is born, like, it doesn't really change the tone of it. Paul is still the good guy, and he's still preaching the good word, and you know, nobody ever changes in this film, you know. It's always the same temperature.
It's not hammered very well, not, no pun intended, it's not hammered very well with Paul, though, because he does have a temperature change, in my opinion, between, like, he starts the process of doing this experiment, and then he comes to the conclusion that this is immoral or wrong
after they make
and then
puppy.
You have
oh god,
no, yeah, I know.
Puppy. I don't want to rob graves.
No,
now.
it wasn't
there's
the puppy.
No
it was robbing
there.
it was cutting down a body that made him do that, made him change his mind.
Yeah.
Like a human form is what the problem was. We can't create human life. The puppy is like weird enough.
There's not a ton of action in this movie, but like I think there's enough to keep me interested. Like you said, Juice, in the second act where he's like getting piece by piece, it does feel a little like monotonous. But like the scene of them cutting down a freshly hung man and like having to remove his head because the birds have eaten the flesh off of it. And then they just chuck the head into a vat of acid and dissolve that shit. And then he goes and like gets a head and eyes and all that shit. And then they like reanimate the creature and then they shoot it in the eye. They kill it and then bury it again, and then Paul leaves, and then fucking Victor's bastard head ass goes and like resurrects this creature again. And then I don't know if you guys noticed this, I found this to be kind of strange. When he gets it back to his lab, he like hangs it from the ceiling again for some, maybe it's to like get it in the vat or something, I don't know, but it's just like hanging in the corner. And I was just like, I don't know. It was like a weird kind of creepy shot.
I thought it was a creepy shot. And like, I didn't really think about the logic of why, but I thought it was cool to look at anyway.
But it's like hanging, and he reanimates the thing again. And now it has twice the brain damage because the brain was, you know, initially damaged when he put it in. It's shot. Yeah. So now he's even more fucked up. So he starts doing brain surgery on this creature to try and correct all the fucked up stuff that he's already done to the brain. Like how like heartless and soulless, like it's full-blown like torture to like do even one of these things. It's like it's terrible to like ponder on, and it makes you hate this character like so much. It creates like a very, I don't know, like one-sided villain, but like one hell of a villain, like an extremely detestable person.
That's true.
Yeah, definitely. But also I want to point out that like there is something I think that Paul's just like, if you're looking for the character that has like a little more depth, Paul is the guy, because like not only does he have that sea change in himself, but also later on he has this whole discussion with Victor where Victor and his fucking rotten ass finds a talking point that has some truth to it, which is that you fucked this brain up. You like it's because of your intervention maybe that this creature is unable to cope and is violent. We don't know. We don't get to see an undamaged creature. So I think that gives him like a little bit of something. And the other thing is like going back to what I was saying earlier is like the difference between like the loving husband and wife is there's no conflict between those characters. Their human characters have nothing but teamwork on their side. And this one, to me, it's more interesting to see these people talk about the implications of what they're doing and argue about it instead of just being like, well, how do we solve our little problem?
Yeah, but I guess I just didn't see that Paul changing. I see that he reacts to the changes in what's happening. Like, okay, yeah, I was down with doing science, but I don't want to dig up dead bodies. Like, I don't feel like that's such a leap in storytelling, you know, like, whoa, he really overcame something to say I don't want to dig up dead bodies or kill people. Like, I never got the indication that Paul was capable of killing anybody anyways.
Did you like, but I didn't like see him as like needing a big catalyst for change. It's like catching yourself.
Not necessarily him. I'm just saying when you have that, when it's just this always good dude versus this always huge piece of shit, then the temperature of an entire, you know, it's not even that long, but of the entire film like does does not change. That's why I said I
It
felt
worked for
like I
Reanimator.
was sitting. I mean, we'll cover Reanimator when we cover.
Yeah,
it.
we'll
I
get
mean,
there.
I'm just saying, like, that's the dynamic. Is
Yeah.
you've got the guy who's dragged, you know, or not dragged. He willingly goes into the dark, regrets his decision, and then tries to counteract it. But in doing so, he has to like work together with the guy who caused all this to happen, who is a bastard man, unmitigated bastard. So I don't know. I like that dynamic.
It is interesting that like at the start of the movie, we see like a younger Victor Frankenstein, like his mother passes away and he inherits all this money. And the very first thing he does is like try and find somebody to tutor him in science. It's like, even at a young age, it's all he has ever cared about. And like that kind of like through line sticks with him. And then they sort of make this great discovery after a few years have passed, and they like bring this little puppy dog back to life. And the dog, I guess, didn't have any sort of brain damage and is like a normal, cute dog. So he's like, gets a taste of like, you know, like you said, like he's got this God complex. So he kind of gets that taste and thinks, I can fucking do this with anything now. And he's just like gonna do whatever it takes to make that happen. I get like, he doesn't really care if he fucks up in the process because he's got the end goal in mind.
Oh, it's not.
He fully believes that he can do it.
See, I guess
it's all part of the process, and he doesn't want like outside input at all. Like he refuses to allow like councils or whatever to review his science and have a say in that whatsoever, or even have an opinion. He's like, no, we're going to go further. We're going to push it all the way until it's undeniably the greatest thing that's ever happened. And then everyone will recognize me.
I guess that's kind of my problem too, is like, he's always a piece of shit. Okay. So if you had a character that was conflicted in any kind of way or had any kind of arc or growth, then you could justify the idea of like, okay, you know, he found himself in this situation where he killed someone and then maybe he regrets it. And so that's why he's not willing to kill anyone to get a new brain. It's like, why go through if you're just a huge piece of shit all the time and you're willing to kill people for your end goal, why are you even doing brain surgery to repair this brain? Like he so willingly kills one of his colleagues. It's just like, at this point, he's willing to rob graves, kill people. Then why wouldn't he just do it again? You know what I'm saying? There's no conflict in this character. And so to restrict him in any way doesn't follow suit with what this story is telling, that he will do anything. So it's like, why even go through the painstaking process of trying to repair the brain when he just kills somebody else and take a new brain?
He does say in the movie that like he will find another brain eventually and another if he has to. And I think the reason he doesn't immediately go grab one is because it's just hard. Like he found that one scientist who was very brilliant, and that's why he wanted his brain, but he also happened to be old and like, you know, someone very easy to like get the jump on, and no family. Yeah, he buries him in his own crypt because he's got no family. So it's real easy for him to do that, you know.
And that's the thing, is like, he's not like, I don't know. To me, like I think he wants that brain. He has a twisted respect for this man that he wants to like include his incredible mind in his experiment, and he's willing to like go the extra mile to do that. Not because his end goal is saving the human race. Like he poo-pooed the idea of even surgery or whatever that Paul brought up. All he cares about is the glory of becoming the God who created life in a human being. And to me, that makes perfect sense. I don't need him to change because he's the villain and we have another character to express that conflict for us. He's a mad scientist. Like I would be interested to see a Victor that is, you know, has more conflict in and of himself, but the conflict exists either way because they created this other character to butt heads with him and to ask the questions that we as an audience are asking. Is like, why are you doing this? The truth is, he's like just an insane person who demands fealty to his own mind from everyone else. And the way he's going to do that is by surreptitiously doing these heinous things until he becomes undeniable. Like he's Thanos, like he's a villain, like he's doing horrible things in pursuit of his own glory.
Why do you guys think he even, other than like, okay, from this character standpoint, why even have a life with Elizabeth at all? He's obviously not actually interested in her, and she's not at the house at the beginning. Literally, like brings her there. Like, why?
Because that's what society does. Like, I don't know. People get married for all kinds of terrible reasons. To me, it's like, okay, this is a predestined thing that we were supposed to do, and this is going to keep me, respected in the public eye, and I don't have to really respect her. I don't have to even treat her like a wife. I could treat her like shit all the time, and I do. But
he was
that's
already
what you're supposed to be.
He was taking care of her as well as his aunt because he had a pile of money that he inherited.
Yeah,
and
I guess that's what I was saying. He could have just.
It was not out of love.
Kept supporting her.
His aunt died, and that's why she came to live in the house. And then I guess they were just like, "Well, we might as well get married because you're fucking here." I guess
they arranged it. He said it was.
Yeah,
she said that. Yeah, she said that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But
yeah, and then like the whole bit with Justine and how she's like, you better marry me because I got your baby inside of me. And then he lets the creature kill not only Justine, but assumedly the baby she's carrying, if she was telling the truth.
Yeah.
Which makes it even more fucked up.
And see, he
has no scruples in pursuit of what he really wants. He only cares about the one thing. And that's the mark of a madman and a villain.
That was a piece that I was confused about when this story kicked off, because you don't exactly know where, he's locked up at the beginning, and they specifically say he's raving mad or whatever. So I thought he was in like a loony bin or something. And but it comes to find out he's in prison. The last shot is of this guillotine coming out, and I personally was kind of confused because I was like, well, nobody believes his story, and the monster drowned in some acid, and I guess the worst crime that they caught him for was shooting Elizabeth, you could say, because she never saw the monster. She just knows she got shot. So I was like, why the fuck is he head toward the guillotine? But then you guys were saying at another point, like, I guess Justine they found the bottle of Justine, but you don't see that. So it was kind of confusing to me.
Well, he does. So when he's relaying his story at the beginning, like, I guess it would be easy to miss because like a line of dialogue, but he's retelling his story to the priest, and he says that, like, Justine was killed. And then like you're led to believe that that's why he's in jail. But obviously it's like an old school jail, and we might not immediately like identify where he is as being a jail, which makes sense.
No, I kind of thought it was a madman cell anyway, like you said.
Yeah.
Jason.
Well, and also too, like the vat of acid, it's like, if you got a dead body, why the fuck aren't you using your vat of acid?
Popo rolled up real quick. I don't know. Started blasting.
Damn popes.
I wanted to ask you guys about Christopher Lee's performance as the creature in this movie. Even though like his screen time is very limited and he doesn't really have any speaking lines, how did his performance strike you as playing Frankenstein's monster?
I liked it.
Yeah.
I thought that it was interesting that it, like, even Karloff, to my mind, had more sentience. Do you know what I mean? Like this, he really did seem like Walking Dead, just a shambling, non-brained thing. And it had impulses, like it was chained to that wall, and it just would stay chained there until it finally was like, I want to keep walking, pull out the chain. And it just like rips this out like plywood. And it's like, I don't know. I kind of like that as a little bit of a change in depiction.
Yeah, I liked that it seems so. I found it sympathetic, especially after the fact, because like he does this kind of face of like, what the, especially after you see the stitches where he's done the brain surgery. You're like, okay, maybe he actually did repair it in some kind of way, because I don't know, he seems sad and like confused, and I felt
he's never mad, he's never happy, he's never anything. He's a blank slate who's led entirely by like base instinct, and that to me is pretty terrifying. Even like I was saying, Karloff's Frankenstein, he had a lot of that, but then like you get fire close to him and he no, and he'll like he'll react to things. This particular one kind of reacts to things, but it's very, very slow, and it's very like shambling. It's more zombie like. I thought that was interesting. I also like what you said earlier, Justin, like the visual depiction I thought was pretty cool. Like it's cool to see, just like, I love that they were forced to not mimic Karloff, because it gave us something pretty different that, like you said, does match the book better and is to my mind scarier. And maybe it's just because that other one is such an icon that it doesn't hold that weight anymore. But it worked for me.
I agree. I do like that, both times he's reanimated, there is a stark change in his mannerisms, and like even just like the expression on his face, they're sort of like blank both times, but there's like a stark difference in his eyes specifically. I think he does a lot with a little, you know, because like you really don't see him much and he can't talk, but like you just see the way like his body language, I think just really comes across very well. And he's also like, when he first comes to life, he's like a super tall, imposing dude. So like seeing that in real life would be terrifying to anybody. So like, you know, seeing him kind of start flailing around, you're like, oh my God, he's crazy, he's huge. It makes sense that you would be terrified. But I don't know. I like the performance quite a bit, even though you don't get a whole lot. I wish we got more of it, to be honest, but it is what it is.
That is one of the things. He since he's a real man, and Christopher Lee's a tall guy, but he's also kind of lanky. That is one of I think in the book, Victor makes him bigger because, and I don't know if he is grave robbing in the book, because I think they specifically said they made him bigger because the size of actual human organs and like putting the tendons and stuff together was too small. And so he had to like scale it up in order for him to even
make it easier to
work
handle.
on it. Yeah. So now I'm wondering like, but then if he was creating these things, like I said, in the book, the idea of the process is a lot more like chill. Like they're just like, he does it, you know, it's not this like
real chill.
He does it. Yeah. It sounds real chill. Taking one quick step backwards, because I kept wanting to say this, like the guillotine thing at the end, I feel like was a missed opportunity, because I thought for sure as they were leading him out that they were going to hang him from the same gibbet that he found the body on, the original.
That's a good.
That'd be pretty good.
I thought that would have been fucking awesome.
That would have been great.
I was so excited. Instead, they kind of did this like distant shot of the guillotine going down.
I guess it's harder to kind of like the guillotine. I mean, it's so distinctive to show through that window shot like they did. You know, the silhouette of it looks good, but I agree that that
I just kind of wish that had happened a little bit differently. I mean, it's still a good ending, but it could have been a lot more poetic with that in my mind.
I feel like I'd much rather go out with a guillotine personally.
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about whether or not he enjoys it better.
Oof.
Woof. I wanted to, if you guys will indulge me once more, like whenever we talked about the Wicker Man, I feel like we very briefly touched on the life of Christopher Lee. And I wanted to circle back to hit on a couple things that he achieved in his life.
Okay.
I feel like we could do like a whole show just on Christopher Lee, but I wanted to sort of like dive a little bit deeper on that. Christopher Lee, he had a career spanning 7 decades, and he ended up being knighted in 2009 for his contributions for drama and charity. He also, I think one of the things we touched on was he served during World War II for the British Royal Air Force. He wanted to fly but couldn't because of bad eyesight, but he applied to join the intelligence agency, and he ended up helping retake Sicily in World War II. He also survived malaria. He got malaria 6 times. He climbed Mount Vesuvius. I know. And then
get that malaria shot.
By the age of 25, he was part of the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare, which is nuts.
Him, Roald Dahl, and Ian Fleming, if memory serves.
Boys, we need to make our own society. It just takes 3.
You know, Ian Fleming, who wrote James Bond, was and he was like, there's like heavily rumored that Roald Dahl is the basis for James Bond.
Damn.
Which is fucking weird.
Apparently, the dude that wrote James Bond was also Christopher Lee's brother-in-law.
Wow,
I didn't know that.
Which is interesting.
What an influential squad! Damn.
And he's from like royalty too, isn't he? Like,
he's like a distant
I'm jumping
relative.
ahead. Sorry.
He's a distant relative of Charlemagne. But
Charlemagne. Yeah. Holy shit.
Damn.
But the details of like whatever went on with the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare was top secret, and he never really spilled the beans. But he did go on to say as much as this. He said, "I've seen so many men die right in front of me, so many, in fact, that I've become almost hardened to it. Having seen the worst that human beings can do to each other, the results of torture, mutilation, seeing someone blown to pieces by a bomb, you develop a kind of shell. But you had to, otherwise you would never have won." So he saw some real shit.
Damn.
Also, the Bureau, was it the Bureau of Ungentlemanly
Warfare? Ministry.
I don't this is from distant memory. of reading about this, but I believe that part of their job was to seduce the wives of the opposing forces and turn them and get information or turn them against their husbands or like, yeah, they were out there fucking Nazi ladies for the cause. That shit's nuts.
Damn, sign me up, boys.
For the Nazi speed dates, Justin's all in. Give me them sauerkraut sliders, son. Let's do this.
When she's pregnant, you say, by the way, I'm Jewish.
Damn.
Oh man.
That's horrible, but yeah.
He was also an expert fencer. He was an operatic singer. And at the age of 88, he released his very first heavy metal record. He released a couple more after that. One of them was a heavy metal Christmas record with a track called Jingle Hell that hit number 18 on Billboard's Top 100, making him the oldest artist with a top 20 hit at the age of 91.
Damn, maybe we should do an episode.
Must be stopped at every opportunity.
Christopher Lee. Holy shit.
Christopher Lee is the most badass.
That man was
that
also in the Howling Deuce. Damn.
He
didn't get once you get, I mean, if you've just seen people mutilated and fucking just stealing people's wives, I mean, damn. Well, I mean, what are you gonna do except make horror films?
Metal
and Attack of the Clone.
He also spoke 6 languages. And in addition to playing, Frankenstein's monster, the Mummy, Dracula, he's also in James Bond movies. He was in Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, The Wicker Man, Sherlock Holmes, and he had a total of 282 acting credits.
Jesus,
just a quick overview.
I've wasted my life.
Yeah, man. You want to feel you want to feel that way? You listen to Christopher Lee's fucking rap sheet.
Damn, that's nuts, dude.
Yeah, so brief overview of Christopher Lee. That dude is insanely badass. If you want to know more, definitely do some research. He's also apparently just a true gentleman, just a really nice dude to be
when
around.
He was stealing wives.
That's true.
Yeah, that was called ungentlemanly for a reason. He got that shit out early.
So here, maybe that's the hotline screams today is, would you steal another man's wife for freedom, boys?
For free.
It's the only way to be free.
The only way to be free is to bang someone's wife or husband.
Adultery.
Would you do
the
it?
Key to freedom.
You're saving millions of lives by banging it
millions
out.
of lives.
Would you do it?
Ava Braun, what would you do?
Bob,
what would you do?
I mean, yeah.
I am not comfortable with the way this line of questioning is going.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
Well, blame it on Christopher Lee.
I won't.
Do you guys have any other points you want to hit before we go ahead and rate the Curse of Frankenstein?
None that spring to mind. No.
Okay. Cool. Oh, let's go and do it.
There is one, dude. Oh,
okay.
What was that scene? What was that scene? It was cracking me up. I'm not complaining about it. Where there's just this dude pouring himself some fucking punch.
Getting fucked up.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd ever seen that guy before. And he's just that shit kill. I wish there was more levity like that, because that was killing me. That dude just pouring himself some punch and cheersing himself and then pouring himself some more. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. Suddenly there's a fucking crazy drunk uncle situation happening in this movie.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of crazy too.
And he never showed up again. Yeah, it didn't do anything.
It's just, I guess, it just is what passes for a laugh, and then you let it go.
I kind of liked it. Yeah.
Getting twisted on the Baron's dime. We've all been there.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Practicing my speech, darling.
Okay, let's rate it now.
Let's rate this thing out of 5. Juice, why don't you kick us off? How do you feel about the Curse of Frankenstein?
Okay, I will. I railed on this pretty hard, but overall, I liked it for what it is. I actually kind of dig on the 50s now that we've covered a lot more films from the 50s. I kind of like this aesthetic. It's got this old timey just look and feel to it that just is interesting to me. I don't know. I vibe on it. I like it. The pacing was a little slow. Like I said, I never found any of these characters particularly interesting because they're pretty one note and don't have a lot of conflict that I see. You know, they have conflict with each other, but not in the choices they're making. Like Paul's always going to do the good thing. Frankenstein just kind of gets worse and worse and worse. And in some ways that can be interesting to watch. But in a movie that wasn't even an hour and a half, I found the pacing quite slow. And especially once you're leading up to the creation of this monster and the monster is created, the fact that we get so little of him and so many things happen off screen, that I just felt kind of cheated in a way, because I was like, I'm just gonna watch Frankenstein get, I already, like, from like minute 15 I knew he was a piece of shit. Like, I don't want to watch it the whole time. I want that to be the sole focus, and it mostly was. The visual effects on the monster look good. You know, the all black suit get up, Christopher Lee's tall, the makeup of the melty kind of face, the dead eyes worked really well. But then he sold some, you know, sympathetic scenes of where after the brain surgery and stuff like that, the bullet in the eye like looked good. It looked good. They did a good job with the setup of the lab and stuff too. And just like Elizabeth was a big no, like nothing character to me. They're just, I don't know, just watching this guy make this monster that then doesn't lead to a whole lot just didn't compel me a whole lot. So I don't want to, like, there were some positives. I don't want to like completely rail on it, but overall I think I'm gonna give it like a 2.5. Like, style and aesthetic wise is good. I don't like the changes they made to like the story necessarily, but I can understand why they might need to. But just watching this like dude go on and on and on making this monster the whole time, it wasn't that interesting to me. But I can respect the craft for sure.
Right on.
Bob, out of 5, how do you feel about Curse of Frankenstein?
I think I'm a little warmer on this one than you are. I really love the lab design, the color saturation, and just like the overall kind of feel of this movie. It's obviously very different from the original like 1931 Frankenstein. And I think like comparing that to like, you know, this 1957 version, I think it's like a very solid and impressive update, I would say. I think the performances across the board are pretty damn good, even though the characters are a little bit like one note. I think what is on screen and what's delivered by Cushing and Lee specifically are like, they really like help the characters kind of transcend in a way. And you do get that dichotomy coming from Paul's character. So like there is some back and forth. It's just, you know, less interesting, I think, that it's two characters instead of one. It does kind of like sag a bit in the second act when he's going and finding all these individual body parts. But I think when they get the original like body cut down from the gallows and you see it like floating in the tank and then the lightning strikes and it finally does get reanimated, like that whole sequence is really badass. When you first see Christopher Lee's The Creature, I think it's fucking great. I really, really like that through the end, and like the true like cold nature of Victor Frankenstein, where like he has created this thing and it is not what it's supposed to be. And obviously what he's created is suffering due to brain damage that he is fully aware of. So it, you know, ends up getting killed and he doesn't give a fuck. He brings it back to life again, even worse shape. It's like so insanely cold. He's like such a hateable character, one dimension for sure, but I think he's a pretty solid villain, to be honest. I don't know. I think I did get pretty good. It does lag in the second act, but I think that's like the biggest negative I really have. I'm gonna come in with a 4 on this one. Randy, how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of your points there, Bob. To me, this movie, like, I think about how this movie could have gone, and I think about like, you know, okay, so what if Peter Cushing was the only, like, Victor Frankenstein and Paul were merged together in Peter Cushing? I think that could definitely work, but I don't think that this time period, like generally speaking, gives a lot of credence to the actor to do that sort of performance that's show not tell. So in the absence of that opportunity, I think that I would much rather watch these two characters volley off each other and have an argument and have a conflict as they're doing the monotonous thing of searching for eyeballs or searching for hands, and just get to have some sort of conflict there that, then have Victor Frankenstein like narrate his conflict or something like that. To me is more dull and uninteresting. So I like, to some extent, the way they've done this. I think it could have been done better, but in the time period that it was made, I kind of feel like this is not necessarily the best it could be, but it is, to me, better than some of the alternatives anyway. I think that, it's a short movie. I didn't feel all that, like, there's definitely some parts you could say lag. I didn't feel it though, the way I felt it with like The Fly or whatever.
Yeah.
It's because I had that conflict between these two characters, like the voice of reason versus the voice of ambition. Like, I was interested in that, and I think that they could have done this movie better with a simple change, kept everything the same, and just changed the ending to have the ending be that he is remorseful for what he's done. He's seen the error of his ways in some ways, and they're trying to get him to, give up the ghost on how to make this monster. Like, what did you do? Some scientist comes in and is like, you got to tell me how you did this. And he's like, no, I won't do it. Here's why. Here's my story. And then at the end, he gets hung from the same gibbet that he found the corpse at in his just desserts. I think those simple changes make this movie, bring this movie up a few notches for me. All that said, I think that the acting is pretty great. Not the best from the time period, but certainly to me stronger than like The Fly, which is what we're using as a barometer. And I think that the look of the monster is great. I think the costumes, the sets are incredible. I don't know, like, I really enjoy like the hyper saturate. I haven't seen a whole lot of Frankenstein that was like this colorful, and there's something fun about that. So yeah, I like this movie overall. I don't think it's perfect by any means. And I do think that it suffers a little bit from being of its time. Where, I would have loved if they had just let Peter Cushing run wild and be, both sides of the coin that we see in Paul and Victor. But with that, the way they would have portrayed that at that time just doesn't mesh for me. So anyway, I think that this is a pretty good movie. I think it's going to be a 3.5 for me. And I'm interested to see more Hammer now. Like this kind of.
Yeah, actually, me too.
I'm
Same,
not big on
yeah.
Giallo, and it's so interesting to me that this hit me as well as it did, because like visually they have so much in common that I just, like, when I first started watching, I was like, oh God, is this going to take me down some path that I'm not going to like enjoy it like I did with Giallo? But because it like is maybe even too forthright and straightforward in its storytelling, I would I guess rather have that than something so bananas off the wall that I have no chance of making it make sense, especially when it's framed as a mystery.
One of the unfortunate things for this cast is it would be kind of fun to do some side by sides or comparisons. Unfortunately, we haven't covered the 1931 Frankenstein. We could do some Draculas or some the Mummies or something. Like what's the differences, or how do you feel about these different movies or something like that?
That would be kind of a cool concept for like one of our Halloween extravaganzas. Yeah, something like that. Like two different eras of the similar kind of like classic monster.
Yeah, we could do we could do a triple feature. Dracula 2000 to really cap off the Dracula film.
Dracula 2000, Twilight, New Dawn.
Wow. So we do have an email here from Miles. This was Miles's pick, and something that we started doing this year is if you do nab one of our Patreon picks, we're asking you guys to send us a voicemail or an email with your thoughts on the movie and why you chose it and your own personal rating. So Miles sends an email. He goes on to say, "What's up, guys? Thanks for watching another one of my picks. I really love what Hammer was doing with the horror genre from the 50s to 70s, and I'm excited to hear you guys' thoughts on the movie, which was largely responsible for that incredible run. Peter Cushing gives an all-time great horror performance in this movie and really gives this and the sequels a lot of their appeal. From what I understand, this is the first time the Frankenstein character is portrayed as an outright villain. I think in the source material and Universal movies, he's at least somewhat sympathetic. While Cushing's Frankenstein is an unredeemable top-tier cooter, he has more in common with H.P. Lovecraft's Herbert West, and I wouldn't be surprised if Jeffrey Combs was inspired by this performance. I suspect a lot of people will find this movie a little slow or dated in 2022, but I love the gothic atmosphere and sets in these movies. And although I don't think this is perfect, I find Hammer's horror films to be prime spooky season movies to throw on that time of year. I have to give this movie a negative point for not fully using Christopher Lee's acting skills, and this is one of the weaker Cushing and Lee pairings, but otherwise I think this is a great movie. 4 out of 5 stars. Thanks, Miles.
Nice. Thank you, Miles. Really appreciate you opening the door for Hammer horror.
Yeah, for real.
I did want to mention one of my favorite, like, since I was criticizing like how they are depicting Frankenstein the monster in this, one of my favorite ones is the Penny Dreadful, where I feel like in both of those, they both have like serious flaws, but in some ways they're a little redeemable, but they hate each other so much that they cause this path of destruction against each other. I think that kind of captures the essence of the OG Frankenstein.
I completely agree with you, but you also have the benefit of like 3 seasons to build that over
absolutely,
time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That shit's fucking good.
Yeah, that is one of my favorites.
So with all of our scores, we're gonna land with an aggregate of a 3.3. Let's go ahead and jump over into our Rotten Tomatoes segment, see what the critics and users think about the Curse of Frankenstein.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment in which these two gentlemen are going to guess with the best of their abilities what the Rotten Tomatoes critics and users aggregate score is for the Curse of Frankenstein. We're going to start with the critics, as we usually do. There are only 21, so keep that in mind when you're giving your aggregate. What percentage of those do you think were positive reviews? We'll start with Bob today.
I feel like this is probably a critical darling. Not like through the roof, but like pretty high. I think I'm gonna go with an 80%, please.
80 percentile. All right, Soju, how about you? Where are you falling on this?
Yeah, I guess so too. I was doing some research about like some of the best Frankenstein movies, and people are putting this above like Young Frankenstein and like towards the top and stuff. I was like, what the fuck? Don't do that.
Don't do that.
So I don't know. What did Bob say? 80. I'll take the high end with an 81.
81. Well, we got us a ringy dingy. Soju's gonna take this one. It's 81 percentile. The $1.
Oh shit. Let me get that. Hell yeet.
If you manage to get the user score, you get to go on to the showcase showdown.
Whoa, the showdown.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's start with you this time, Soju. There are 2,500 plus audience ratings for this film, over 2,500. So where do you think the users are going to fall on this one?
I'm going to take it down just a scotch, but I'll still stay kind of high. I'll say 77.
77. Bob, how about you?
I'll $1 up with a 78, please.
Well, this might be a first. Another ringy dingy from Soju.
Holy shit.
Double dingy. That's a double dingy boy today.
Holy
I've never
shit.
seen. I want to make this clear that I went to this man's wedding and I've never seen him this happy.
Yeah, you were flailing your body around.
Damn, I thought he was gonna say Bob got the ring a ding with a $1, like another $1 ring a ding. Oh,
that is the cleanest sweep possible.
That is a hell yeet sweep, Bob. Double ringy ding hell yeet sweep.
I don't see how Bob's gonna come back from this one.
I don't think we've ever had a double ringy ding.
No, I don't think so.
Damn,
much less from the same person.
Damn. Whoa, boys! It only took 300 and something episodes. 367.
I like those odds.
It'll never happen again.
We'll see it again in episode 700 something.
All right. There is no critics consensus because there's just too few critical reviews. So let's go with a negative review and see if it's any fun. This person says, a routine horror picture which makes no particular attempt to do anything more important than scare you with corpses and blood. Boy, this guy is just not a horror fan. It sounds like, like that guy has no idea how many people he just convinced to watch this movie.
Badass.
Yeah. All right. That's as good as it gets, I think, with the negative reviews. So congrats to Soju. Well played today.
That's wild.
And
can't believe that shit.
Bob, I'll give it back to you.
Appreciate you. Let's go ahead and talk about some trivia.
It's totally time for trivia.
All right. Yeah, I've got a little more trivia pulled up here for the Curse of Frankenstein. So Christopher Lee's monster makeup, which we talked about a little bit, was almost literally done at the very last minute. After previous attempts to design a monster makeup using a cast of Lee's head had failed, makeup artist Philip Leakey made the final design the day before shooting began, directly onto Lee's face using primarily cotton and other household materials. Since he didn't use any latex or molds, the makeup had to be recreated from scratch every day.
Damn.
Which is nuts.
That fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
At the premiere of the film, Robert Urquhart was so disgusted that he stormed out of the theater. He hated it so much that he never made another horror film or worked for Hammer again.
What?
Damn.
Damn, dude.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad. Shit.
It's really not. That's you know, that's an example of somebody just being a little bit too invested in their own mythos, I think.
A little too British. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yep. It's the British part.
In the movie, Peter Cushing goes to a charnel house to get his, quote, supplies for his work. A charnel house is a vault or building.
My tools, I've got to have my tools.
Is a vault or a building where human skeletal remains are stored. In countries where ground suitable for burial is scarce, corpses would be interred for approximately 5 years following death, thereby allowing decomposition to occur. After this, the remains would be exhumed and moved to an ossuary or charnel house, thereby allowing the original burial place to be reused.
You don't know what death is.
Yeah,
you do
wild.
now.
Just throw Randy in the trash, huh?
Dude.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit.
I want my own Nick Cage tomb taken care of forever
Dude.
by the Catholic Church.
Is that a tomb shaped like Nick Cage?
Yeah.
It's all you got to do is give them an undisclosed amount of money, and the Catholic Church will do whatever you want them to do. I hear. So.
Maybe in the
That's
future,
what undisclosed sums of money tends to do.
We'll have like robot tombs that can turn into like Transformers and move to better locations if the land is threatened.
So you see a little like window where you see just somebody's rotting corpse inside of Optimus Prime's chest.
Then he turns into a little jet and flies away.
I want to be buried in Cheetor. Is that cool? Is that allowed? Rat Trap. No, give me Rat Trap.
You want to be buried in Cheetos.
In Cheetos, in rats.
Wow.
Bury me in rats.
That's a whole different dream I have.
Oh, there's a new Meat Canyon Cheeto theme thing. By the way,
I'm sure it's terrifying. So
it'll make me want a Cheeto.
This movie had such tremendous financial success. It reportedly grossed more than 70 times its production cost, which is nuts. The original theatrical release. A brief shot of there's a brief shot depicting the prop head being dissolved by the acid. The shot was cut and replaced with a quick shot of Frankenstein's face as the bubbling sound plays. The BBFC supposedly felt the scene was too morbid and had the scene cut from the movie. In all subsequent airings in theaters and on television, the missing shot is believed to have actually been cut from the original film and no longer exists.
What a bunch of prudes. Can't even watch a skull dissolve.
Dude. Just watch the skull. Okay,
just watch it dissolve. Okay,
just watch the fucking skull.
Just chill. This is the last bit I have here. So, unlike the Universal Frankenstein series in the 1930s and 40s, in which the character of the monster was the recurring figure, while the doctors frequently changed, it is Baron Frankenstein that is the connective character throughout the Hammer series, while the monsters change. Peter Cushing played the Baron in each film except for The Horror of Frankenstein, which was a remake of the original, The Curse of Frankenstein, done with a more comedic touch.
Interesting.
I want to see that.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Cushing,
so I guess he doesn't die? Or do they just write that away?
I don't know. I haven't seen the other ones.
Well, you don't see him die. You just see a guillotine.
He stars in The Revenge of Frankenstein, The Evil of Frankenstein, Frankenstein Created Woman, Frankenstein Must Be Destroyed, The Horror of Frankenstein was the one without Peter Cushing, and then lastly, Frankenstein and the Monster from It. The whole shebang. That's all I got.
Shebang.
Oh, baby, shimmer. She floats like a cooter and stings like a bee. It's time for Cooter of the Week.
Bees?
Straight chillin'. Cooter of the Week.
Juice, what is a cooter and why do we hunt them?
Cooter, it's a character type and a straight chillin' exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a cooter, but we want the cooter with the most points. The 5 points of cooterdom are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall looking attire, and overall patheticness. Boys, I think we got ourselves a cooter this week.
It's Miles. It's fucking Miles.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Whoa. Wow.
Just kidding. I think we all know who it is.
It's
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Baron.
Nobody in this movie or in recent episodes that I can think of quite lives up to the cooter title like Victor in this one.
He even hits sexual deviance.
Oh yeah.
He does.
So one, he's like brings this he's cousin fucking, and 2
he's a cousin wrecker. Cousin wrecker.
Cousin wrecker. I'm gonna wreck you, cuz.
That's a good bump right there.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
I'm gonna pull that one.
Do your thing, cuz.
It's your thing, cuz. But yeah, so he's sleeping around with the help, of course, old Justine.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he's definitely got that on lock.
He promised his hand in marriage to the maid, and when she tells him that she is pregnant and he can't marry this other woman, he laughs in her face openly. He's like,
you fool.
And then suggests that she just fucked every guy in town and that it's probably one of their kids. What?
So manipulation too in that same situation of like, oh,
that's
I'm gonna marry you or whatever. It's like, damn, dude, you don't have to do that shit. Yeah. Damn.
Oh God, he's a bastard man for sure.
So
the only thing that's
manipulation.
Yeah, manipulation, smug arrogance.
Arrogant.
Wow.
Yeah. As fuck.
For sure.
Now here comes the harder parts though.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's a pretty well-dressed man myself.
There was one thing that kept bothering me. I don't know if it's going to necessarily lead to being a cooter, but dude's got like this white ass suit on and like just rubs blood all over it.
Dude, I noticed that too.
I was like, why are you doing that? Pick up a black
chalk that up to
suit,
being a rich piece of shit who
yeah.
loves corpses.
Yeah. It's like, God
he's got
damn.
another one. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
It's
He really
white.
doesn't. I felt bad for whoever's like doing the costumes though, because that shit's not coming out.
No,
this is not coming out.
Yeah, it's like, dude, come on now.
Yeah, and then patheticness. I mean, he kind of ends a little pathetically. I don't know that he's like he's rarely out of control where it's.
I would say he's pathetic. Yeah, when he like loses control and he's like, you got to listen to me. You got to.
Yeah, that's a
He
little.
does
like-
it 2 times.
he's begging at the end, like begging for someone to believe him, and
Which
that's
that's
He's
the
a murderer.
I think
Like,
that's pathetic.
murderers begging for their lives is pretty pathetic. That's true.
Well, I'm not
Yeah.
even necessarily like he's a murderer begging for his life. He's not even necessarily begging for his life. He's begging for someone to believe that he's capable of creating life. Before he dies, he wants people to know how capable he was.
Yeah.
That's
Pathetic. Pathetic as fuck.
Okay, yeah, I'll give him
because
pathetic.
he
It's a
admits,
lower
yeah, he's
tier than
in
the others.
prison heading toward the guillotine, and he's still admitting to a murder that nobody was even suspecting him of the doctor. So he's admitting to that murder so people will believe that he made
Yeah,
life.
yeah,
that's true. That's true.
That's 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah.
So definitely
book
solid
his
tier.
ass. I don't think like there's no one else, right?
Book
Nobody.
that ass.
No, there's no one
I
like.
don't think so. Yeah.
You find Mother Cuda when you book that ass up. That's terrible.
Wow.
That's fair.
Let's sit on that for a second. Let's just let that soak in. Oh boy!
Oh yeah, we all soaked.
We got him.
Yep.
We got
thanks for soaking in my shit water with me.
Baron von Kuderstein. All right, let's let our hair down. We're chilling out, relaxing, maxing all cool, talking about what we've been watching outside of school. Let's do it.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Well, what a week to choose that reference. Okay.
You guys are on point. Why? What happened?
Yeah, if something happened, I don't know about it. I don't want to know.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I mean,
and yeah.
Recent.
They're bringing it back.
Unavoidable
events. That was like a couple weeks ago. Come on, Randy. Don't make it seem like something just happened today. Come on now.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
We're in a new.
Oh my god! Me think the ladies doth protest too much.
Randu, what you been watching?
Well, I have been slowly working my way through Ocarina of Time. It's a fabulous, fabulous game.
Oh yeah.
Midway through the Fire Temple, have not taken on the water yet, which is always the linchpin level for me.
Fire one's dope though.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. And you know, it's amazing what, you know, an extra 20 years of dexterity and gaming will do for your ability to finish a game quickly. So yeah, that's going well. I did, you know, Becky was out of town this week, so while they were out of town, I decided to watch most of the last couple years of Marvel movies that I had not seen, to give me something light to watch. So I watched Eternals, I watched Shang-Chi and Spider-Man No Way Home. I have not taken on Black Widow yet, and I may not.
That's fine.
But I'll say in order, Spider-Man's good, Shang-Chi is pretty good. Eternals not so much for me. The Eternals to me really feels like MCU doing DCU. I said that in the Slack today, and I stand by that. It really feels like way too self-serious for such a cosmically driven story, whereas like Guardians managed to do that purely because they surrounded it with fucking bops and like funny one-liners.
Yeah.
So I just kind of like didn't dig on it too much. I also like the stinger, like the post-credit stuff or whatever. It's getting so obscure to this point where it holds no weight for me whatsoever. So yeah, that's where that one was. Shang-Chi I thought was fine. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was fine. Spider-Man No Way Home was fun and I thought mostly good, but it was largely on the back of me being pretty nostalgic for the older Spider-Man movies.
Sure,
yeah.
And you know, they did a good job handling those characters, and God, Willem, love seeing that guy.
Dude.
That guy rules.
Chance to shine. Glad he got that.
Yeah.
I watched the pilot episode of a show called Abbott Elementary as well, which is a sort of like the Office style, like talking mockumentary sitcom sort of thing with talking head interviews, but it's set in like an inner city public school, and it's pretty good so far. Like I've only watched the first episode, and I've heard that it gets really good, which is what made us want to watch it. But you know, very, very slight information on that, but I think it's okay so far. I don't know what network it's on originally, but I want to say NBC. I could be wrong about that. And then I finished up season 2 of Joe Parra Talks with You. That show is incredible. That show is a joy pill that you can take at night and make yourself feel happy. It's great. Good shit. So that's about it for me.
Sweet deal. Juice, what you been watching?
Dude, I've actually been watching so much. I think since like my midterms were done, I was like, I'm free. I watched the new Harry Potter world thing.
You might be the only one.
Yeah, it's that second movie was so rough that by comparison that it's better, but it's still just an unfortunate series of poor like studio choices over and over. It's such a studio movie. It's unfortunate. There's some fun aspects of it because I really like kind of mourn that they took this like that first. I like that first movie for being like in the world of Harry Potter and a franchise film. Like I get it, but like that, it's just so easy to me to like take the wizarding world, throw it back in like a time period piece, 1920s, and like set it in different cities. That's interesting. People want to know like what the global wizarding world looks like. So throw it in New York, throw it in Paris, take it to, Asia. That's all you gotta do. Like that's all you gotta do. And they fucked it. They had to go the Star Wars route of who's related to the Skywalkers and who's it's like, who cares? Somebody's a Dumbledore bullshit. It's like, get your head out of your assholes. But anyways, I watched that. It's done now. Hopefully. I watched The North Mang, which we'll be talking about soon. So I don't want to say too much. I'm just like, I really am curious to see in a few years, like Robert Eggers continued to make films and how he's perceived as a filmmaker, because mostly, he was rooted in horror. But I think more people are just like coming around to the idea like he's just a good filmmaker. And it's kind of the same. It's interesting because it's kind of the same path as Anya Taylor-Joy, who they were like still work together, and she was rooted in horror, but she's just an amazing actress. And now people are like coming around to that idea. And so I'm just curious to see like as he continues to just keep making films at like a high like level, what that turns into just in the film industry. I don't know, and his perception and stuff. So he did a good job, of course. That dude kicks ass.
Nick Cage said he wants to be in his next movie.
Okay.
I would be interested to see how that pans out.
I'd watch that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would watch that. I mean,
there's a number of ways
that could go.
I certainly would watch it.
Yes, absolutely. That's all I'm asking for. And the thing, I don't know. We'll get to it.
Yeah. Let's see. I've still been working through the newest Viking season. I'm glad I came back to it because it was cool to then watch the North Mang. But also, like, I do remember how much I did enjoy that series. Actually, it's a good series. I'm in season 6 now, so I would recommend that show. The music in that show is amazing. I really like some stuff they do with that. I'm almost done with the second season of Good Place. I've heard that they gave that show like a proper ending, like they didn't just keep milking it. So I'm glad to kind of get there eventually, because I think I've got one more episode in season 2, and I think there's only 4 seasons, so I should get there pretty quick. And leading up to Friday the 13th next month, I've been watching some Friday the 13th. So I went back and I did 1 and 2 so far, and like part of 3. I gotta finish 3, so I won't comment on 3 yet. 2 was not as good as I kind of held in my mind. He's not the Jason we know. He's not hulking, he's standing on a chair at one point to hide his feet. Like he's got these little schemes, and he's kind of just this dude wandering around the woods. I was like, oh yeah, I don't know, it really is quite different than the part 6s and the as crazy as it gets.
Jason isn't like Jason until like part 4. Really. It's like everybody like thinks of Jason. He's like really comes into play.
He's not a zombie,
and that's wild.
Much later.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah, because he's just a dude in overalls. I mean, he's more than just a dude, but
he's a man, baby.
But it was so it didn't hold up as well, but it's still good. It's a still fun summer time. It's one of the best, like going to summer camp or people at summer camp on the lake and stuff. I like that vibe, of course. And as the weather gets hot, it's very appropriate. So I'm looking forward to getting more into the Friday the 13th franchise over the next few weeks. I think that's all I've been watching. Bob, what you been watching, my guy?
Man, after I watched Dracula 2000, I was like, you know what? I got to watch next? Queen of the motherfucking Damned.
Damn, Bob, you do not value your time.
It's better than Dracula 2000.
Damn.
So that's good. It's still pretty bad. It's also like, it's called Queen of the Damned, and like there is like a vampire queen in it for sure, played by Aaliyah. But like, it's not really her story at all. She's kind of like a side character. It's about this like shirtless dude with Jonathan Davis's voice. And his character is not interesting whatsoever. It's really kind of just like a commercial for like, I don't know, new metal kids to go buy this like soundtrack. Really, like, hey, you like this bullshit? You like Jonathan Davis? Go buy this soundtrack that we're putting out. And Jonathan Davis has like a really small cameo in it. It's a weird vibe. It's a very weird movie.
We need to cover that shit.
Probably should. Yeah. And like the way the vampires, like the effect that they use when the vampires are moving very quickly is this strange, like frame skippy effects that makes it look like they're almost moving super slow instead of super fast. It looks comical. It was a terrible choice. I don't know why they did it.
That movie was the inspiration for movies that you would hate poll picks, because I was like, we got to find a way to try to make Randy watch this movie.
Get a Randy rant. Yeah, dude,
that is my go-to movie for what movie would Randy hate the most. It's Queen of the Damned.
Queen of the motherfucking Damned. Anyway, that was sort of a blast from the past. Other than that, I started watching season 3 of Atlanta because it finally came back. That show has been on hiatus for like 4 years, I want to say, since season 2 concluded. It's great so far. I've only seen, I think, 3 episodes of it, and it's still got like kind of these creepy horror beats sprinkled throughout it. It's definitely not like a horror show, but it's got like elements of that in it, which is really interesting. Like the season starts off with almost like a creepy folk tale. Like it's an interesting way to start the show. And then they kind of, they're abroad, they're in Amsterdam, like touring and stuff. And they come across some pretty wild characters, and it's funny and got layers, got a lot of layers. There's a lot to unpack with that show. Donald Glover is taking his gloves off for sure. There's a lot going on. Good shit so far. Also, the last thing I got to mention here is I watched this Tony Hawk documentary that's on HBO Max. It's like a 2-hour documentary. It's just about his whole life, really. It's sort of like a retrospective from when he started skateboarding to like present day. It's called Until the Wheels Fall Off. I didn't know a whole lot about Tony Hawk other than like, when his video game started coming out, and like, that's, middle school for us anyways. And like from then on, but there's like so much more that happened before that I didn't know about. That was really interesting. And he gets into his personal life a little bit, and like him finally like landing the 900 at the X Games, and like they really cover the whole thing front to back. So if you have any interest in like skateboarding or just like, the history of Tony Hawk and like how he got started, I recommend checking that out. It was like really well made too. And that's on HBO Max if you want to check that out. That's really all I've been watching.
Well,
yeah. We got
they've been kicking out those like 90s kids documentaries because the Alanis Morissette one came out and shit.
This is our last gasp at relevance, boys.
The Woodstock 99 documentary.
The Nickelodeon Orange Room or whatever that shit's called.
I guess I got another 10 to 12 years before they start, exploiting my childhood heroes.
I gotta take it down.
I gotta take it down. We got one more segment to get into, and that is, of course, our hotline screens.
Hotline screens.
If you're listening and would like to call in and leave us a voicemail to be featured on next week's show, you can do so at 904-638-3231. We have one voicemail this week. We're going to hear from our buddy Jack. Let's hear what he has to say.
Oh, I'll leave a fucking message. You better fucking believe it, man. Boys, men, Straight Chilling Podcast. It is Jack, your New England hawk, and I'm calling in yet again. I'm driving this time because I don't know if you can hear my freaking engine with this thing. Like, what a unit this thing is. Anyway, yeah, so I listened to your, last time I called, I asked for music recommendations. I listened to all of it. It was phenomenal. Fucking Cleopatra, it hit fucking different, and I got my whole gang listening to them now. That was a phenomenal fucking recommendation there, Bob. Attaboy. Other than that, just been hanging out. I think the current thing this week is like, if you were gonna make a Final Destination death, what would you do? Man, I don't fucking know. The fuck? You know, I will say that the one thing that influences me about those movies is I think there's one, like, scene where someone drops a water bottle, and it goes in, like, their, like, driver's cab area, and it fucking blocks the brake or something, so they can't brake, and they slam it in the back of the car. I think about that drops a water bottle and, like, drop it out. Like, all right, I'm going to die, and I need this to be fixed right now. So that it's poisoned my fucking brain. I don't know. I have absolutely no way someone could die in a Final Destination type death. The other day I was tuning a bass guitar, and the fucking the string snapped, and those things are big bass and meaty fucking metal. I feel like if that chopped your jugular, like, that wouldn't be good, you know? I feel like you could probably bleed out. So yeah, there's my ticket. You take that thing as a fucking thing.
And that's the end.
Damn,
I think he might have crashed in a horrific way.
Yeah,
maybe
because of a logging truck.
That's a good call about the string. As soon as you said that, then I thought about a piano because the strings are much bigger or whatever. I was like, oh yeah, if a bunch of piano wires snapped and you were like had your face peeking in, you know, like through the front or whatever, and they all just slice through your face and throat, that'd be pretty cool. Kill.
I mean, if you got killed by a bass guitar string, that's pretty fucking metal.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Sure.
There are less cool ways to go.
I used to be
guitar forever.
I used to be super paranoid for a while about pumping gas. So if like some kind of like gas tank exploded while you were trying to get gas or something.
I saw somebody. I pulled up to a gas pump last week to fill my tank or whatever. Saw somebody just like left a cigarette on top of the pump, like dangling off.
Jesus Christ!
I was like, that's not
a death curse.
That's the thing too. Yeah, if like one pump started exploding, you were just pump gas, had nothing to do with you. I assume it would be a huge chain reaction.
Yeah, that would not end with you.
Yeah. So
also like greenhouse gases and stuff, you know, we're just we're going down the whole rabbit hole.
I like that Jack just called out our shitty prompt. I love that. It's just like I don't fucking know. That's you know,
and then
fair
he did.
But then he figured it out, you know.
I
don't know.
I like it. Yeah, check out Cleopatra if you haven't. Good music recommendation. Glad you guys enjoyed that. Also, on Randy's recommendation, Pup, the band Pup, put out a new record that is fucking insanely good. Check that shit out.
Pup the band. They are going to be the hottest shit in the world.
Man, Matt was recommending a band recently that I was digging on too. Oh, what was that on the Slack? He posted a couple of their videos. I really dug.
Oh, they're called Wet Leg.
Yeah, Wet Leg. Yeah. Yep. I would say Wet Dream. Yeah, he posted a couple in this. So I was digging on that sound actually.
Which band? Sorry, you cut out.
Wet Leg.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so yeah, I will say that Matt has been recommending on the Slack Wet Leg recently.
The leg is wet.
Wet leg.
Leg.
I got me a wet leg.
Couple other music recommendations for you. I have a prompt I'd like to throw out for next week that's kind of related. to the
Not
Curse of
the
Frankenstein.
Nazi wives one?
No, in
Would
addition,
you bang Nazi wives?
Or freedom?
in addition to the sauerkraut sliders conversation.
That's a
you know,
very
we're-
limited conversation for just white men, by the way.
we I think we all pretty much mentioned that Hammer horror is a bit of a blind spot. None of us are like super familiar with it, but if you guys have a Hammer horror movie recommendation you think we should check out, call in and let us know about it. We'd like to hear.
Yeah, I'll take that for sure.
Yeah.
Anything else y'all want to pose?
Nay.
What is it, Randy?
No, it's nay in the
Oh.
English sense,
Oh,
of course.
Yep.
We're not in fucking Korea.
Well, one of us
Come on.
is.
One of
No.
us. Fact.
Nay.
I checked it, and that's factual. One of us is in Korea. So yeah, call in and leave us your voicemails at 904-638-3231. That does it this week for us. It's Straight Chilling. Again, thanks to Miles for picking the flick. We're going to be back next week with a brand new show. We're going to be talking about that brand new Robert Eggers hotness, The North Main.
Whoa.
Oh God, yes, come with me.
Slam your eyeballs into that. Get ready for next week's show. Until then, please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. You can hit us up on Twitter at STR8_chilling, on Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join in on the daily Slack channel conversations, just drop us a line on one of our social media outlets, and I'll send you a link so you can do so. And until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.